The UN has been hiding some unsettling information for a long time, but today I'm going to reveal it all and shed light on the fallen angels. Let's dive right in. High up on Mount Hermon in Israel, a surprising discovery has been made, but it's not widely publicized. It seems like the United Nations is keeping it under wraps. The story begins with the Watchers, who are said to have come down to Earth long ago, as mentioned by Enoch. Fast forward to today, where ancient mysteries overlap with modern events. On Mount Hermon, the United Nations has set up an outpost on the site of an ancient pagan temple, effectively blocking access to it. Even more curious is how photos of the temple have seemingly disappeared from the internet, likely on purpose. Some conspiracy theorists might link the fallen angels to the United Nations. At the base of this tall mountain is a place known as the Gates of Hell. Jesus brought his disciples to this location towards the end of his ministry, saying, "On this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." You might wonder if he was referring to the mountain itself. In Matthew 16 verse 18, the verse leaves us pondering. On the summit of Mount Hermon, a prominent biblical archaeologist made an incredible discovery, an inscription believed to have been made by the fallen angels. But there's more to this story. As Bible teacher Nelson Walters notes, Mount Hermon is full of history and mystery. The story connects back to Jesus and his disciples in ways that many Christians might not know. The town of Caesarea Philippi, where Peter made his famous confession, sits right at the base of Mount Hermon. The gates of hell, or Hades, were believed to be a cave at the mountain's base. The land has a dark history stretching back to the time of Moses, when it was known as Bashan. The Old Testament tells of Bashan, ruled by two giant kings, Sihon and Og, who were linked to giant clans like the Rephaim and Anakim, thought to be descendants of the fallen angels. During Israel's divided kingdom, King Jeroboam set up a pagan religious center in Dan, south of Mount Hermon, where the Israelites worshiped Baal. By the 1st century, a religious center dedicated to Zeus was also located there. The name Mount Hermon itself means taboo in Semitic. In Judges 3, it is referred to as Baal Hermon or Baal's taboo mountain. To the Israelites and the apostles, this was a place of great evil. Today, a United Nations outpost sits atop the mountain. What are they doing there? We'll explore that later, but first, let's talk about what's hidden in the mountain's past. At the summit, ruins of an ancient pagan temple complex remain. Among these ruins, an extraordinary find was made, a limestone standing stone inscribed with an oath attributed to the Watchers, who sought to corrupt human genetics and share forbidden knowledge. The spiritual history of Mount Hermon attracted the interest of archaeologists. Sir Charles Warren, known for discovering Warren's Shaft on the Temple Mount, explored Israel in the late 1800s. During his journey, he climbed Mount Hermon and found that the rocky southern peak had been modified to create altars for ancient mountain gods. While exploring, Warren discovered a standing stone with an inscription in a language similar to ancient Greek. The stone was at the summit of Mount Hermon, a place full of secrets. Warren decided to remove the stone for its protection and to study it further. Because the stone was very heavy and thick, Warren's team had to break it in half to bring it down the mountain. Although this made the descent easier, the stone was damaged. Once in London, the stone was examined at the British Museum. Scholars translated the inscription as, "According to the command of the greatest and most holy God, those who take the oath proceed from here." The full meaning of this message remains unclear. Today, the standing stone is still kept in the British Museum, listed as item number 19034021. It is not currently on display. Photographs of the Temple of Qasr Anwar, where Warren found the stone, are rare and the temple site is now sealed off. The United Nations' involvement and the lack of accessible photographs raise questions. Interestingly, 6 days after Peter's significant confession, Jesus took Peter, James, and John to a high mountain, which many believe was Mount Hermon. It was here that Jesus is said to have undergone a transfiguration, revealing his divine nature. This event might have taken place near the summit, close to the temple complex and the mysterious standing stone. Why would Jesus choose such an important location? Consider this: it was the site where angels rebelled and came down to earth, according to the book of Enoch. Jesus might have chosen this spot for the transfiguration to make a statement to both his disciples and the fallen angels. He wanted them to see his true nature and understand their own future. In Genesis 6 verse 4, there's a mention of giants on earth during that time, born from a forbidden union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. This story describes powerful and feared beings before the flood. It dates back to just after Satan tempted Adam and Eve, around 1,000 years before the flood. During this period, about 200 fallen angels, possibly led by Satan, came to earth to corrupt humanity's DNA by mingling with humans. This story is discussed in the book of Enoch, which, although not part of the Bible, is respected and even quoted by Jesus. This ancient text, also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, tells a similar story to Genesis 6. It describes angels who, fascinated by human women, decided to marry them and have children. The leader, Sajaza, feared facing the consequences alone, but the other angels were committed. They swore an oath to support each other and carried out their plan. They descended onto Mount Hermon during the time of Jared. According to Enoch 3:2-5, these angels took an oath on Mount Hermon to follow Satan's plan and corrupt humanity's DNA, aiming to prevent the birth of a Messiah as God had promised. They hoped that if they could corrupt all of humanity, no Messiah would come. This dark plan was marked by an inscription on a stone. It read, "According to the command of the greatest and most holy God, those who take the oath proceed from here." But who is this greatest and most holy God? Is it the true God of the Bible or Satan, their false god? The meaning of the inscription on the stone is still a mystery. Pastor Doug Ham, who studied the stone, found a potential error in its translation. He suggests that the inscription might not say Holy God at all. Fast forward to today, where ancient mysteries overlap with modern events. On Mount Hermon, the United Nations has set up an outpost on the site of an ancient pagan temple, effectively blocking access to it. Even more curious is how photos of the temple have seemingly disappeared from the internet, likely on purpose. Some conspiracy theorists might link the fallen angels to the United Nations. The UN's upcoming Summit for the Future, scheduled for late September 2024, aims to persuade nations to give up their sovereignty to the UN, potentially handing control of global governments to the organization. This agreement might be the covenant with many mentioned in Daniel 9 verse 27, which could start the tribulation period. The connection between the ancient standing stones, the UN's presence on Mount Hermon, and these significant events is striking. Are we seeing a modern version of an ancient dark plan? What forces might be behind these events? Questions linger, much like the ancient secrets of Mount Hermon. The UN's presence on the summit, which is part of a peacekeeping force between Israel and Syria, may be linked to a biblical peace plan. The idea of a peacekeeping force protecting an ancient temple site associated with fallen angels raises intriguing connections with biblical stories. Mount Hermon is the site where fallen angels are said to have descended, where Jesus was transfigured before his disciples, and now where the UN outpost hides access to the ancient temple. The link between the past and present seems too striking to be just a coincidence. The presence of the UN on the mountain and the prophecies about the end times suggest something significant is happening today. There's a blend of supernatural and historical elements that hint at larger events, going back to 1947. That year was marked by important events. Israel was on the verge of becoming a nation, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, the United Nations was formed, and UFO sightings were reported worldwide. These events might be setting the stage for the end times. The connections between Mount Hermon, the UN, and these historical milestones raise questions about what might be unfolding beneath the surface. Are we at a crossroads between ancient prophecies and modern reality? It seems like we're on the brink of major events, and only time will tell how these elements will come together in the future.